What happens when a homeowners association thinks they can flex their power too far when arrogance, ignorance, and overreach collide with the wrong person? What if they tore down what wasn't theirs and then found out they didn't just mess with a cabin, they messed with the county? Today's story isn't just about a cabin. It's about pride, revenge, and a legal checkmate so satisfying you'll want to rewind and hear it again. This is the true jaw-dropping story of how an HOA bulldozed a man's off-grid cabin, only to realize too late that every square inch of land beneath their polished sidewalks and pristine driveways was owned by the very man they tried to erase. Sit back, buckle up. This story gets wild. It all started with a dream. Not the American dream with picket fences in suburbia, but the kind of dream that lives deep in the forest, surrounded by tall pines, chirping birds, and no cell signal. My name is Eric Dalton. After 20 years of working in construction and property development, I cashed out. Tired of the noise, the taxes, the wall letters, the grind. I wanted off-grid peace. I found it in a quiet county, tucked between two state parks, far from any city limits. The property was gorgeous, 38 acres of raw wilderness, and the perfect place for a small, self-sufficient cabin. No neighbors, no rules, just the land and me. I designed and built the cabin myself. Solar power, rainwater collection, composting system, everything I'd learned in 2 decades of building. Went into that place. It wasn't flashy, but it was perfect mine. I filed all the permits, got approval from the county. No issues for 5 years. I lived there in peace, and then the way I came. About 10 miles down the mountain road from my cabin, a developer bought up a huge plot and slapped down a new gated community. Cedar Ridge Estates, they called it. Cookie-cutter homes, identical driveways, and of course, a brand noir board with shiny clipboards and superiority complexes. I didn't think much of it. They were miles away, separate plat, separate zoning, but that didn't stop the board from thinking they had reached. At first, it was little things. Letters addressed to me with warnings about unauthorized structures visible from their hiking trails. Then came threats of fines for non-compliance. I sent a letter back. I don't live in Cedar Ridge. I don't fall under your HOA. They ignored it instead. They doubled down. It happened while I was out of town for a week. I came back and my cabin was gone. Flattened, just the slab remained. No warning, no call, nothing. I drove down the mountain in a rage and confronted the board president, a smug man named Trevor Halston. He acted like it was no big deal, claimed I had violated aesthetic standards, and failed to obtain WAP permission for new additions to the cabin. I hadn't added anything. The whole thing was a lie. He handed me an invoice for the demolition, $28,000. I laughed in his face, then I walked away. Because I knew something Trevor didn't. You see, I never told anyone what I'd really been doing. The last few years out there, yes, I'd built a cabin, but I also quietly bought land. A lot of land over the years. I had been quietly acquiring parcels, old logging land, overlooked lots, tiny strips with tax liens. I did it through trusts, Shell L, LCS, and friends who owed me favors. Why? Partially for investment, but also because I knew one day suburban sprawl would reach this far, and when it did, I wanted to be ready. By the time Cedar Ridge Estates broke ground, I already owned over 600 acres in the county. And guess what? That included the land beneath the HOA's clubhouse, walking trails, and most deliciously, their stormwater retention pond. They never did their title checks, right? So when they tore down my cabin, they did it while squatting on my land. I hired the best real estate attorney in the state. We compiled every deed, every plat, every GPS point. We filed a lawsuit for unlawful demolition, trespassing, destruction of property, and emotional distress. But that wasn't all. We also filed to evict the law itself from every parcel they had illegally built on. Trevor tried to bluff, claimed eminent bill mine. Except HOS don't get that right. Cities do not, private neighborhood boards. Then the county stepped in, not on their side, on mine. Because when we presented our stack of legal titles, not only did the court side with us, but the county commissioners realized something else. The HOA had also failed to pay leaseback fees on county easements that I technically now owned. They'd been using my land, my water runoff area, in my trail paths without permission. The board tried to settle. They offered to rebuild the cabin. I declined. I had other plans. Legally, I had the right to gate off my land. So I did with the court's blessing. One erected locked barriers on all 4 of the community's access roads. Their main road mine. Their site exits mine too. Suddenly 42 homes were landlocked. No legal way in or out except on foot. They panicked. Some tried to sue. Others tried to bribe me. One even threatened me. But I didn't budge. I filed notices of access termination to all residents. Their HOA had failed them. If they wanted access to their own driveways again, they could sue the board, and many did. The board crumbled in weeks. With the settlement money in the county's apology, I rebuilt my cabin, twice as big with steel reinforcements, solar upgrades, and a full basement. The new cabin stood not just as a home, but as a monument to what happens when arrogance meets quiet patience. In planning, I built a little fire pit with a sign, HOA Memorial Lounge. I host bonfires for friends every winter. Guess what's nearby? The old HOA clubhouse. Empty now, for sale. But no one wants to buy it, because the land it sits on is still mine. And I turned off the utilities. Eventually, I donated some of the surrounding land to a conservation group with a clause: no development ever. I turned the HOA's favorite nature trail into a wildlife corridor. I led a local hunter education group, train on the old tennis courts. I even let the local high school film a horror movie on the empty lots. Poetic justice doesn't get sweeter than watching a fake zombie apocalypse filmed on the land that once held smug HOA meetings. And yes, Trevor moved quietly. No goodbye, no apology. Just gone. What did I learn? That power, unchecked, always comes back to bite the abuser. That when people think no one's watching, they get reckless, and most importantly, when you buy land, know exactly what you're buying. And what's underneath it. HOAs aren't evil by default. But the ones run by people like Trevor, drunk uncontrolled, they forget that. Real property law isn't about threats and fines. It's about title deeds' quiet authority. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't threaten them. I just owned them literally. So next time you drive through a manicured neighborhood and you see those private property, no trespassing signs, just remember, sometimes the real owner is sitting quietly in the woods, sipping coffee on his porch with a stack of land deeds and a smile. Thank you for watching. If you love this story of poetic justice, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell. And remember, never mess with someone who knows real estate law better than you do, because they just might own your entire street.